Hello, it is time once again for the Europe Report on France 24, your daily update on the European Parliament election. I'm Catherine Nicholson. Well, let's get stuck straight in with hundreds of party lists and at least 8 pan-European political groups. Many voters out there might well be struggling to know who to give their vote to. Well, on Wednesday evening, lead candidates from 6 groups, those with the biggest share of seats currently in the European Parliament, debated some key topics in Brussels. Now, the socialist candidate Frans Timmermans possibly won the most memorable line of the night for comparing post-Brexit politics in the UK to Game of Thrones. Here are the candidates, starting off with Mr. Timmermans.
Look at what the divisiveness of Brexit has done to the United Kingdom. Today, the United Kingdom looks like Game of Thrones on steroids. And that's because of this divisive politics.
Tomorrow's headline.
That's because of this divisive politics. So we have a collective responsibility to offer propositions to our citizens that will make them come back to the European project.
If we want to answer, we have to make Europe democratic. In the Brexit case, the main message of the Brexiteers was, I want to have my sovereignty back. People feel not that Europe is my Europe, and I want to change this.
And what is now done to fight all the fake news and all the junk news that we see out there, that is part of the solution. To give people real food for thought and invite them back to a real discussion about how we unite our national democracies and our European democracy to make it work in everyday life.
I don't think that more Europe and more Europe and more Europe is a universal response for each and every problem, like, unfortunately, EPP and socialists that were running the European business for the last 25 years. And I don't believe that they will be able to come with some genuine change.
As European parties, we need to take a decision. Are we collaborating with those extremist forces? Unfortunately, the EPP, we have that situation in Austria, where you have been partnering with the FPÖ. We have the whole Orban issue that hasn't been solved yet. So I think it's a problem of whether we should take distance, whether we say we stand strongly on the basis of European values and human rights, or we don't do it.
Either we choose the market and we blindly follow the rules of the market, or we choose to defend Europeans. They're the ones we must protect and take care of.
Well, this time next week, the UK will be voting in a European election that it never expected to be involved in. The most recent national poll by British polling company YouGov put the recently launched Brexit Party, led by Nigel Farage, on 34%. The parties which have dominated post-war British politics are faring much worse, 16% for Labour and just 10% for the ruling Conservatives. Well, France 24 has been speaking to a former British minister who wants a new referendum on Brexit. Peter Mandelson told our Mark Perelman a new vote would bring the public back into the decision to define the type of Brexit they want, or even if they want to cancel it altogether.
We've decided to leave the European Union, and this is the mandate that we're going to give the government to negotiate the next phase. So we want to leave, but we want a soft Brexit, or we want to leave and we want a hard Brexit, or we want to leave and we don't want to deal at all, we just want to crash out. Somehow the public have got to tell the government and the parliamentarians what they want. And we've got to find, in my view, we've got to find a way of bringing the public back into the decision to enable them to do so.
Now, here in France, President Macron has openly acknowledged that he sometimes has, quote, fruitful confrontations with Angela Merkel over policy. Earlier on Wednesday, Chancellor Merkel spoke in an interview of differences in mentality with her French counterpart, but she also said that Paris and Berlin agreed naturally on the big issues. Well, President Macron responded to her interview in a news conference in Paris.
I don't believe in sterile confrontation or sterile entente. I believe in fruitful confrontation, which means you propose something, you see how your partner responds, and together you try to find a compromise.
All right, let's turn our attention to Austria now. Migration has remained a priority for many Austrians since the 2015 migration crisis. And in 2017, A centre-right and far-right coalition was elected after a campaign that focused heavily on immigration. Well, today it's not just immigrants from outside the EU who are affected by new rules. A recent law now means that family benefits are different depending on where the children of the family live, even though taxes remain equal for everyone working in Austria. Well, some say it's inequality, others that it's fair play. Clovis Ghazali met two women originally from Austria's EU neighbour Slovakia to learn more.
Hello.
Katerina and Monica left Slovakia to earn a better living in neighbouring Austria. These nurses are among those most affected by the government's cuts on family benefits. Since January, payments are indexed on the living costs in the country where the children are based.
How old is your daughter again? 23 this year. Look, I'll show you a picture on Facebook.
Monica moved away from her loved ones 7 years ago. It was the only way for her to afford sending her daughter to university in Bratislava.
It's harder for me because her university fees cost €450 a year.
She works hard to earn €1,400 a month, and now she gets €80 less a month of benefits.
It's unfair. Austrians get €220. Why am I treated differently? Are we not all human beings? It's a huge discrimination. I'm like a second or third class citizen. In Slovakia, only the rent's cheaper. But gas, water, food, clothes, all of that, they cost exactly the same as here.
The government is a coalition formed by the centre-right Austrian People's Party with the far-right Freedom Party. Chancellor Sebastian Kurz and his allies say family benefits needed to be reviewed to avoid so-called welfare tourism.
We believe Austria is respecting the law, and we have several points to put forward. First, we make no difference based on nationality, but on the country of residence. An Austrian child living abroad is also impacted by the indexation of benefits, whether it's favourable or not.
Authorities say the measure will help save €100 million a year, and polls show 80% of Austrians support the move. Others, however, keen to voice their opposition loud and clear.
The OVP party's positions are always brutal and inhumane.
They call themselves the grannies against the right, and every Thursday they march on the streets of Vienna.
It's madness to index benefits on the country of birth.
In fact, it violates European law.
Exactly, it's illegal.
Our country is constantly breaking the law.
In 2018, Germany failed to get a revision of the European Constitution to carry out a similar reform. Austria passed its own law anyway and is now facing a possible fine from Brussels. After this stop in Vienna, the France 24 Europe tour is back on the road. Our next destination is Budapest in Hungary. The right-wing government there, under the leadership of Viktor Orban, has passed a law allowing companies to demand that employees work up to 400 hours overtime a year. That's about one extra day a week. It's been dubbed by critics the slave law. We'll see why in our next report. See you soon.
We will indeed be catching up with Clovis and the team tomorrow. Well, let's move on now, though, with our show and tell feature, where we find out how ordinary objects in pretty much all of our lives are impacted by the EU. For that, we have Roxanne Runel with us. Hello there, Roxanne.
Hi, Catherine.
Now, you've got a whole selection of items with you today. Can you take us through them?
Absolutely. So I have a plastic cup, plastic cutlery, straws, even a coffee stirrer. I also have a plastic bottle, a food container made of plastic, of course, and lastly, cotton bud sticks. And I guess that answers your question. I am not going on a picnic.
I was going to say, where do the cotton bud sticks come into this food sort of theme? But no.
I brought these to tell you about how the EU protects the environment. It happens that these are among the 10 single-use plastic products that will be banned in the EU starting January 2021. Last March, the European Parliament approved a directive that plans on banning the 10 plastic-made products most often found on European beaches. We're supposed to see a beautiful list coming up. There it is. Cotton bud sticks, I mentioned that. Cutlery and plates, could not find any in Paris today. Straws, sticks for balloons, cups, food and drink containers made of expanded polystyrene, and all oxo-degradable plastics.
Okay, so plastic bags and that kind of thing. So can you tell us why there's been such a sort of quite drastic and quite sudden ban?
Well, actually, the ban is part of a broad EU plan aimed at combating plastic pollution. Every minute, a ton of plastic is being poured into the ocean. You might remember this picture of a seahorse that was holding on in the ocean, or another one, terribly sad, of a whale that was found dead in the Philippines last March with 40 kilos of plastics in its stomach. And because plastic pollution affects life in the ocean, therefore, of course, it affects us. It poisons our food chain, and the EU has made it clear it wants to act on this. So overall, plastic products covered by the directive make up 70% of the waste currently found in our oceans and beaches.
Wow, it's amazing to think about all those items being washed up. I saw this week there was a plastic bag found in the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the sea
Very
on
impressive.
Earth. It's obviously a really big contribution to cutting waste, all of these items. But there are lots of things that aren't on the list. The EU could have gone further, surely.
It could have, and actually it tried. For example, there are measures in favour of recycling plastic bottles.
I was going to say, they're not on the banned list, are they?
They're
the
not.
bottles?
They are not. But within 10 years, the EU wants us to reuse 90% of all the plastic bottles. Also, within a decade, they want manufacturers to be using recycled plastic for 30% of all bottles.
Okay, so that's pretty ambitious. Hate to be devil's advocate, but perhaps expensive as well. Does this mean that the consumer is going to be forced to take the cost on themselves?
Well, hopefully not, because the directive also plans on extending what we call the polluter pays principle to industries responsible for marine litter. That means, for example, that the tobacco industry will have to pay for the collection of cigarette ends. This starts in 2023.
Okay, so some big moves, certainly. And goodbye, it seems, already in Paris to plastic plates. You couldn't find them anywhere.
Nowhere.
Okay, there you go. So it seems the revolution started already. Thanks so much, Roxanne Runel. He'll be back again in our next future edition of Show and Tell. Well, that's it for this edition of the Europe Report, but we will be back with you later on. I hope to see you at 6:30 p.m. Paris time for a fresh update. In the meantime, do of course stay tuned to France 24 for more international news headlines. See you soon.